There is one more thing we need to do within the sidebar component. Display the correct numbers of unread, sent, important, and trashed messages. For this, we need to access the messages. So let's pass these in from the app component. Before doing so, we first need to add a prop to the sidebar component. So let's open up the sidebar component as mentioned and add a props object here. And I'll add the object because I want to define the type of the input property. And here add the messages property and an object, setting the type to array because it's going to be an array of objects. And I want it to be required because otherwise this component is not going to work. And with that, we can pass in the messages from the app component. Let's open it up. And here we can use the vbind directive to pass in the messages. And I'll refer to the messages data property here. Back to the sidebar component, I now want to group these messages by their status. For instance, I want a property that I can use to access the unread messages. I will add a computed property for each message state, which then filters the collection of all of the messages. So let's go ahead and add the computed object. And the first computed property I'm going to add is one named unread messages. And I'm going to use the filter method on this array, rather the input property. And this filter takes a callback for each message. And to include a message in the resulting array, I have to return true here. So return a Boolean expression right here. So if the message.type equals incoming, and if the message has not been read, so if the isRead property is not true, and if the message has not been deleted, then I want to include it. So this will give me all of the messages that I will categorize as being unread. Next up, I'll add a computed property for the sent messages. And actually I will just copy this part and modify it accordingly. So the type should be outgoing. And I only want to include the last part of this expression. So if the message has not been deleted. Let's copy this. Because now I want to add a new computed property for the important messages. And the criteria for this type of messages is that the type is incoming. So let's set that back to incoming. And let's say is important, must be true. And the message should not be deleted. Just like that. And lastly, let's add a new computed property for the trashed messages. And the criteria for this is just that the message must be deleted. So we don't really care about the type of the message. So this is deleted property has to be true. Now before moving on, you might be wondering why I'm doing this within the sidebar component. Because aren't we going to need this within each of the views too? Yes, that's true, but I have added the logic here for simplicity, because it makes it easy to pass around the messages, because it's just a single array. You could of course implement a collection class or a utility, which does the filtering and thereby centralize the logic. However, the focus right now is on using components, but I just wanted to mention this in case you were wondering. And now I can easily output the length property on the computed properties, because they all return arrays. So let's go up to the template, and notice I have these spans right here. Now it's easy for me to use some string interpolation and write unread messages dot length. And just to be lazy, I'll copy this and just change the name of the computed property here to send messages, and here to important messages, and lastly to trashed messages. And opening up the browser, refreshing the page, we now see the correct numbers being output instead of question marks.